So, new week update. Super stressful. I think a lot of people been facing a lot of stress lately, similar to me. In one of the biggest challenges in my life right now. It is definitely not something that I can just solve with a snap of my finger. It's not something that is easy to solve. It's a very complex challenge that I needed to go through. And talking about the stress, the funny thing is that in a lot of previous video, I talk about gratitude, journaling, meditation, working out. All this thing basically helped me to get through my day-to-day stress, but this time it doesn't work like that. My stress is still as tremendous as it needs to be. So it kind of pulled me down back to a reality that all this thing is good thing to have, is things that you need to do to help you to become stronger mentally and all this thing. But sometimes some of the stress, some of the challenges you face in life, you can only resolve through facing it and looking at it straight up. Be patient and go through it slowly. So yeah, it's not easy. It's not something that I can just tell you any advice that you could take or anything to solve it, because I personally still going through this challenge. Maybe I'll make a video on how I'm facing and how I'm eventually conquer the challenge that I have internally as well. But right now, the only thing I can do is to break down this challenge, like the stress, understand how it's formed. It has a root cause, and for me, mine is very work related. So looking at the stress itself, you break it down to simple terms, and from inner to outer layer. So you write down what internally you feel about the stress and what is the factor that contributes to the stress internally. And then you write down on the other column basically the external factors, right? So a lot of times the external factors I would just tell you to just ignore, because if it's an action of someone else, if it's some other problem that has been happening around life that you couldn't control, you couldn't control it, you couldn't solve it, you couldn't change the other person. So ignore that. It's good to write out, it's good to have a clear understanding of the stress, but that part is something that you just totally ignore and yeah, just let it there. But what you can solve is that since you have this comparison of internal and external, this is what I do. Right now I'm working on the internal problem I have, and a lot of time it relates to confidence, my personal skill, and other things, right? So for the things, for example, for me, the work stress right now that I'm facing, one of the biggest thing is that I don't really have the confidence, and I don't think I have the enough knowledge to carry this through. That's why I'm so stressful. When I go pitch to someone else about this idea, when I talk to people about this, I'm not confident. This lack of confidence caused me the stress, because I know being lack of confidence, I wouldn't be able to convince the other person, right? So this is what I have. So the only way I could get through this is to work on the internal things that I have. If I don't have sufficient knowledge, then I will need to actually work very hard to power the knowledge that is needed. But on the other hand, if basically leads to certain factor that I might not be able to do it myself, then probably it's time to admit that you're not that good anyway. And try to seek help. Seeking help is a very hard thing to do, especially it's something that's a problem or challenge that is very personal to you, but it might be something that is very necessary. You might need to change your perspective. That's what I did. And does it help me right now? I'm not sure, but I do definitely see things moving again. Whether it gets better or it gets harder, I don't really have a clue. But at least it's moving. And I think that's the most important thing compared to all. Making the things move again instead of like fearing it and just leave it there and it just never work again. That's worse, because in your life you need to constantly go through all these challenges to grow. It's tiresome, but yeah, it's something that you need to do. So let's see. I hope I have a lot of good news to share to a lot of you soon. Let's see what happens.